Greetings, pet lovers. Bridget here with First Street Pets, and today we're going to talk about the changing face of animal sheltering post-coronavirus. Whether you're watching this video during the time of coronavirus or whether you're watching it afterwards, you will remember that this has been an important time for animal sheltering and animal welfare. As some of you may know, my background is in animal sheltering. I am a retired shelter director. I have been an animal welfare advocate all my life. I am currently the president of Mission Reunite, a national nonprofit, and this kind of work is very important to me. I and countless others have struggled for years to bring about changes in animal sheltering, and the tide is turning, thank goodness. But there are still so many practices that shelters are just mired in that are outdated, antiquated, and have no place in today's world. Now, we're not going to get into detail in this video. That may be a subject for another video, because today I want to talk about what the plans are for the future. So as you probably know, with the onset of coronavirus, many changes were made nationwide and around the world, putting restrictions on travel and shopping and public gatherings and so forth. And animal shelters also fell under those restrictions during that time. Now, obviously caring for animals is essential, so shelters were allowed to have staff to feed the animals and take care of them and provide those services which were mandated by law, such as handling aggressive dogs who may have bitten someone, or traffic hazards and various things like that. But shelters were forced to close most of the time, if not all of the time, and also to majorly cut back on other services like education programs, like behavior and training, volunteer programs. Many people were laid off. Volunteers were told not to come in for their own safety, for their health. And all of a sudden they were faced with a dilemma of, well, how do we run our operation when we're not open to the public? We're taking in stray animals, but people can't come here to find them. We have animals that were relinquished or that we never found their owners. They were strays and we didn't find the owners. And how are we going to get them adopted if people can't come in and look at the animals? What are we going to do? I did a previous video, which I will link in the description, at the beginning of this situation, where I spoke in amazement at some of the major changes that these agencies made literally overnight. And those included massive increase in foster programs, which was timely because with many people working from home or laid off or unable to work because of the situation, many more people are at home. So this is a really ideal time for folks to bring in an extra dog or cat or other animal into their home and life and provide a temporary home for them. Adoptions by appointment and virtual adoptions were started. A number of online services were encouraged and developed in the weeks that followed the start of the quarantine. People were able to choose animals online and to come down to the shelter and meet with a staff person outside with a mask on and other various precautions to see if they wanted to adopt that pet. So there was minimal contact between people, and generally they weren't coming into the building unless it was somehow necessary to do so. Paperwork and so forth, and even payments can all be done on a computer. So a lot of those processes were improved very quickly. Another really cool thing that I just read about, I'll also link in the description, is adoptions by video chat. People want to see not just a picture or a recorded video of a pet, but they want to actually see and kind of feel like they're interacting with the animal. And so that was done in the case of the article, which I'll link below, which I think is really cool how much people were thinking outside the box. Obviously, shelters also had to drastically reduce intake. And managed intake is something that I and other advocates have pushed for many years, that a lot of intake is really unnecessary and counterproductive. And especially with cats, you're taking in these strays, and people are very much less likely to find their pet at a shelter than they are in their own home environment or in a different situation. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details today, but in any case, intake management is a known and effective strategy for increasing life saving in animal sheltering. And that had to be done in this case because they simply couldn't handle that many animals with very minimal staff, no public coming in. Other steps had to be taken. So public were encouraged to hang on to stray animals, to get them scanned for a microchip, to leave cats alone if they appeared to be friendly and healthy and were probably just outdoor cats or indoor-outdoor cats anyway. So a lot of these changes happened literally overnight. And I applaud all of the leaders and all of the frontline staff who made these changes that have been needing to be done for years. A Facebook group was created for shelter leaders during this time. I got invited, so I haven't really been posting, but I've been following the conversations and really excited to see, as I mentioned, all of these different things that are happening. One of the really cool things about the internet and social media and these kinds of groups is that back in the day, shelters were really siloed. Literally, there could be half a dozen shelters in the same area, didn't talk to each other, didn't communicate, had completely different policies, and weren't even aware of the things that they could be doing that maybe the shelter down the street was doing that worked very well. So in today's world, we can share information so much easily, and that was no exception on this particular Facebook group. So I was really pleased when I saw an article come out from Kristen Hasten Auerbach. I hope I'm not ruining your name. We've never met in person. I only know her in the Facebook world, but she is one of the amazing leaders during this time. She and her peers are really spearheading these life-saving changes. And she wrote an article titled, "The Future is Here: 10 Steps Shelters Can Take Now to Build Better Animal Services." Because at some point, we realized, okay, all these things are working super well. Why not keep doing them? Why go back to the way it was before? When we've tried these things, they're working very well for life-saving, for the shelter, for the health of the animals in the shelter, for faster adoptions, for better service to the public, more engagement of the community who wants to be involved. They want to know what's going on and they want to help. So let's just keep doing it that way. So what I'm going to do is go over these 10 things now, and we're going to discuss them a little bit. I'm not going to read the article. You can do that yourself. I'm going to link it in the description if you'd like to go ahead and read it. But I just want to talk about these things a little bit today. And I would love to hear your opinions in the comments about what do you think of these changes and what are maybe some other changes that we can do. And before I start, I'd like to remind everybody, if you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon, you will get notifications whenever I upload new content. I try to do at least one video a week. I'm very busy right now. When I'm less busy, I'll try to do at least 2 videos a week. And I'm just starting to do more animal welfare content. I also have content on pet business, a lot on lost pet recovery, and just sort of general pet care topics and a little bit of fun stuff. So here we go. Step 1, reserve intake for only pets who truly and urgently need to be sheltered. I couldn't agree with this more. When I was in animal sheltering as a director, this was always my approach, that we only should be taking in animals that we can help, that need help, and that we can help. If you just open the doors and blindly let anyone drop off any animal that they find or don't want anymore, you're just opening a door to a flood, and you're going to drown yourself, your staff, and all of the animals. So this is how any other business would be run. You would think strategically about the things that you need to be doing. And I think animal sheltering should be no exception. Step 2, as suggested in this article, is to restructure org charts. And she suggests distributing orgs equally between 3 functions described as home, shelter, and pet social services. So I know that's just an initial draft kind of idea, but I definitely agree that organizations need to restructure. If you just look at any number of shelters, just pick 5 shelters out of a hat anywhere in the country, they will have completely different structures. Some will have massive amounts of line staff. You'll have 20 or 30 kennel staff and not even that many animals. You'll have other agencies that are the opposite way, that have numerous layers of management that are extremely top heavy and spending a huge amount of money on directors, managers, presidents, assistant managers. It's just a little crazy. I think things sort of start with a seed and they start a certain way, but then the business just kind of grows randomly. Again, it's not treated as a business, so nobody's really looking at it critically and saying, is this structure working? And do we have enough people in the right areas? Of course, in my work with lost pets, I've always advocated for a lost and found coordinator. Many shelters have rescue coordinators, volunteer coordinators, educational coordinators, everything except that. And those are the bulk of the animals you're seeing. In many shelters, it's 70 to 80% of intake that are stray or lost or missing pets. And there's no one to really manage that. So I totally agree that the organizational structures need to be looked at. And I don't know how much this is going to happen, because there are unions and a lot of people are obviously invested in their jobs. So that may be a challenge. But again, post-coronavirus, shelters, like every other business in the country, have lost a lot of revenue and are going to have some recovering to do. So this may be a good time to look at how you want things to work more efficiently. Step 3 is define and implement a new range of pet-related services and functions. So in this one, she talks briefly about some of the things that have been done during this time in having remote services, enhancing the online presence of shelters. It's still, I am in total disbelief that still today, some shelters, and I'm talking big budget shelters with millions of dollars, 100 employees, new facilities, and everything, still don't post found animals online. I mean, that was something we did 20 years ago. And so again, these are things that everybody needs to look at and say, this is not acceptable to say that we can't do that. We don't have time. We can't afford it. That's the way that the business has to be run. And I definitely agree that we need to also engage the community more. I think for too many years, generations really, we have been telling the public that the shelter is a safe haven, that you should bring animals there and they're safe and they need to be rescued and they need to be adopted, when a lot of that really isn't true. Really, the shelter is not the best place for many animals, if not most of the animals. There are many other solutions today in proactive life-saving agencies, such as behavioral counseling, surrender counseling. What I have seen is that when surrender counseling is offered, only about 1/3 to 1/2 of those who were originally going to surrender actually go through with it. They either resolve the issue and keep the pet, or they're able to rehome the pet themselves with a friend or relative or another trusted person. So the animal never has to go through the shelter system. Number 4, and this is an excellent point, ensure most outcome pathways for pets start prior to intake. And this is something I learned in my earliest days of animal sheltering. And it wasn't my idea. I learned it from some of my dear friends who were in advocacy long before I got into sheltering and gave me ideas about how things should be done. And one of these was diversion at the door. That was one of those things that I was told. And the idea was to have a plan before the animals come into the shelter. And you do that by setting policies, and you do that by reaching out to your community, offering them help before they need it, before it's a crisis, before they need to surrender their own pet, before it's kitten season and they have half a dozen cats having kittens on their farm. You plan ahead, you work with people, you engage your community, you change their expectations, and you change the paradigm. Number 5 is to use existing technologies and social media platforms. Now, I remember back in the day when I was 19 or 20 at one of my first shelters where I was working in the front office, and we had just gotten these things called computers. And I swear they were set up for a year before anyone used them. Nobody had a computer at home. Nobody knew how to use them. They were trying to create a program to manage animal sheltering. And frankly, they're not a whole lot better today. At that time, and even today, we still haven't figured out a way to create a description system with breed and color. So I don't think anyone will ever agree on that. But at least in today's world, we have many things at our disposal that are already set up. We have the internet, we have computers and all of their cousins, phones, tablets, laptops. Everybody has these things now. Everybody uses them to look for services. Why not optimize for what people use today? We all have websites. We should be posting all animals online. And again, trying new things such as the virtual adoption, such as the live video chat with potential adopters. Why not try it and see if it works? Especially in the case of missing or lost pets. The internet and other kinds of outreach can be extremely helpful. And I talk about this a lot in my videos in the Lost Pet Recovery playlist, which you'll see on my channel. So I won't go into great detail on it here, but there are many reasons why people don't know to go to a shelter, especially for a cat. Cats should absolutely not go to shelters. But if dogs are going to shelters, and in most cities there are laws that dogs can't be allowed to be roaming around stray, many steps need to be taken to reach out to people, to engage them, to help them understand what to do and how to look. And if pets are being held in the community, if neighbors are helping neighbors, it is amazing how much more effective that is, because so often when you're in this business and you see how the reclaims happen, often a pet will be found right in front of their house or maybe down the street or around the corner. So if some effort had been taken at that time, and many people do, many animal control officers do this, they really make a proactive effort to do field returns. They knock on doors, they hang things on the doorknobs to see if this is maybe your dog. They check for microchips in the field. So these things are being done. It's not that they're not being done, just that they need to be done all the time and by every agency. And why not? Why make more work for yourself? Why make it harder for people to find their animals? Number 6 is to serve pets and people. And she talks about creating and deepening partnerships with veterinarians, with pet owners, other social service agencies. I am seeing many shelters now doing food pantries. I often did that at my shelters because we'd get so much food donated that we couldn't actually use it. And many shelters, unless they're really super small, are on a program where they get one kind of pet food at a discount, because as you probably know with your pets at home, if you're feeding a different food every day, the pets are going to get diarrhea. So it's best to have one product that you can get at a bulk discount and feed that same product every day. But when people are coming looking for something for free, they don't care what brand it is. And most of this food is good, not expired, in sealed bags. So it's really good to help people out. And especially in one shelter where I worked, it was a rather poor neighborhood and many people were struggling. They were homeless. They came into the shelter on bicycles and they got whatever they could for their pets. And that bag of dog food could mean the difference of them keeping their pet. So these kinds of services are super important. Also, just any kind of support, whether it's spay, neuter, vaccines, microchipping. It's amazing if you reach out and just believe that people are good and that they care and that they're responsible and give them what you can. It strengthens that human-animal bond. Which leads to number 7, supporting the human-animal bond. And this is something I have griped about for years, that in shelters, traditionally, we were breaking the human-animal bond. We were taking people's animals away from them. We were telling people they were irresponsible. We were telling them all of this was their fault, when actually none of that was true. And I'm not saying that there aren't cases of cruelty and neglect. There most certainly are, and those need to be handled appropriately by law enforcement. But in most cases, if someone's dog gets out and gets picked up by animal control, it's not because they don't care or don't want their dog. If someone's cat is outside, many people keep their cats outside. We all have different opinions about that. I keep my cats indoors. I'd like to build a catio so they can go outside. Some cats can't stay indoors. They'll go crazy and tear up the house and spray everywhere. Everyone has a different opinion on this. But in sheltering, we don't have a right to judge and to say how people should or shouldn't live, only to provide them with the services they need and to work towards improving that bond and supporting that bond, rather than thinking we can take their pets away and find some other home for them, which could be better, which A, probably isn't true, and B, if you do the math, there's no way you're not going to take away everyone's pets that aren't perfect and find all these perfect homes and give them away. That's just never going to happen, and that's not how life works. Number 8, house most pets in foster. And she suggests that between 50 and 90% of pets could be housed in foster homes. I agree with that, especially owner surrenders. You're not looking for another home for this pet. Now, I understand there may be some behavioral concerns, but that is where the surrender counseling comes in handy. If you know that this dog may have bitten someone or attacked a cat or something, those are some factors that are important in your decision to take the animal at all, to place it for adoption, or to place it for foster. But again, in many cases, those animals would do best in foster. And often with the person who found them, sometimes with another foster family. I'll be curious to see, after this is all over, how many people maybe continue working from home. In my personal opinion, it is absurd that people have to drive 30, 60, 90 minutes to work every day so they can sit at a computer and work on the internet and a telephone, which they could be doing at home, like I'm doing right now, making this video and posting to the internet. So I'm really hoping that many companies and government agencies and everybody else will focus on supporting their work at home team. In today's world with computers and internet, it is very easy to supervise people to make sure that they complete what they need to complete every day. You can even chat with them on their computer to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's so many ways of keeping up with people's goals without them having to be sitting in an office with 100 other people and someone physically watching them. This isn't 1900. This isn't a factory. This is the 2020s. And I'm really hoping more people can be at home. So anyway, my point is that if more people are at home, it'll be easier for them to care for their pets, and a higher rate of fostering will be more possible, although it is still possible in the current situation. Number 9 is build neighborhood programs. This is amazing. I know that HSUS has done some work on this with their Pets for Life program through Mission Reunite. We've interfaced with them on a few instances in helping people reclaim their pets from shelters and so forth when they had lost their pet. There are many communities where they're considered a resource desert, where for other things as well, maybe for human health care, for hospitals, for stores with healthy food, but also for pet care. Many people live in an area where it might be a 45-minute drive to a veterinarian, and maybe they don't have a car, or their car isn't very reliable. In any case, there are a lot of areas like this in this country, and I'm sure all over the world, where people need services. And rather than blaming people and saying they're irresponsible because their pets aren't spayed or neutered and they buy the cheapest dog food they can get at the grocery store, why not go into the community and offer the services? And we see again and again with programs, again, like Pets for Life, that goes into a lot of communities. Compassion Without Borders goes into Mexico, into some poorer towns and areas, and offers spay-neuter and deworming and defleeing and basic services like that that people really want and would love to have, but they just either they can't afford it or they literally don't physically have access to these programs. This will make a huge difference. Why wait till these animals end up in the shelter with mange, with their fourth litter of puppies? Why not go out and offer people the services they need in the community? Solve the problems on the community level. And I shouldn't say solve the problems. I should say let people solve their own problems. People want to do that. People don't want to be irresponsible. They don't want to be helpless. They want to take care of their own business. Sometimes they just don't have the means to do so. Number 10 is keep cats and kittens in the community. I agree with this one wholeheartedly. This can be a very contentious subject because people have a lot of different beliefs about cats' impact on the environment. I am neither going to agree or disagree or argue with anyone because that's just not my style. I like to look at things from all points of view. But whether I agree or disagree with you isn't relevant. What you think about this isn't relevant. The fact is that there are uncounted millions of cats out there. We will never know how many cats are in any community. We will never be able to control populations 100% from a shelter. Shelters take in no more than 5% of the animals in their communities, which means the other 95% are being handled by the people who live in those communities. When I find that cat management works most effectively is when you engage communities. And I've done this myself personally in my own work, and I've known many others who've done it on both small and large scales. Engaging the people in their communities to keep track of the cats in their area, to spay and neuter, to place adoptable kittens, to make sure that the animals are vaccinated, microchipped, and etc. Because back in the day, cats were simply trapped and brought to shelters and put down, and it made absolutely no difference, is the point. It doesn't matter what you do. You could trap every cat that you possibly could, and you won't make a dent on the population. You just won't. People will get more cats. They keep their cats outside. Cats will reproduce by themselves outside. That's never going to change. So the only way you can make any positive difference, again, is to support people in taking responsibility for their own areas, providing them the services they need, like spay neuter, and just leaving these cats alone. And for heaven's sake, if you see a healthy, friendly adult cat sitting outside, it's probably sitting in front of its own house. And this is something I saw a lot in my work when folks were finding and reclaiming their cats from a shelter, is that they were literally picked up across the street or 2 doors down. So it was ridiculous for them to have been taken into the shelter and spent time there and all that, and the owner has to come down and pick them up just to bring them right back to where they were before. So thank you to Kristen for writing this article, and to you and all of your peers for all the amazing work that you do, for the folks at Maddie's Fund, and all who support these life-saving programs. I want to say in conclusion that I am really eager to see how things go in many ways, as I mentioned, about people working, about homeschooling, and all of the other changes that we have gone through during this time. And just to note, I certainly do not mean to make light of the terrible plague that coronavirus has been. I do not mean to make light of the terrible sickness, of the death toll that has been in the US and around the world. I am only talking today about the social and economic results of the changes that came about because of coronavirus. But I have to point out the irony of the fact that in animal sheltering, our biggest problem was always sickness, was infectious disease, was all these animals crowded into the same place, spreading disease and developing medical and behavioral issues. And how in 2020, it took a virus, an infectious disease, to force us to change our ways overnight in a way that will prevent infectious disease for both animals and people. I hope you like this video. Please comment with your opinions. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.